Kalt uudesella uniprte. Hello and welcome to part 7 of the Small Nutway course. Today we will talk about quite a bit by kind of a bunch of small topics. The main part will be about the plural and this and that, but then we will also talk about a lot of other affixes. What is an affix? An affix is something you put in onto a word. There are 3 different types: prefixes that go before a word, suffixes that go after a word, and infixes that go into a word. We will not talk about all of these today. Infix will have their own video series, which will come probably in a few weeks. And also for pre and suffix, we will not talk about all of them, as some of them are bound to other grammar topics and will then discussed in the videos about these topics. For example, we will not talk about the question pre or suffix be. We will not talk about ne, which makes adverbs, because there will be an own video about adverbs. We will not talk about ve, which makes the cardinal numbers, so like the first, second, third from the numbers. And probably I missed a few other ones, so this list is definitely not complete. It just shows an overview of affixes that I personally find important, or even just good to know, doesn't even have to be completely important. And like I said, if an affix will be talked about in another part of this video series, then it will not be listed here again. So, what precisely will we talk about? Like I already spoiled, we will talk about lenition, what it is, when to use it, how to use it. Then we will talk about the plural, which is probably the most important thing you can do with affixes in Nutway, as you will do it very, very often and people usually learn it very early. We will learn about this and that, every and all. This and that are very versatile in Nutway, use them for a lot of different things, so these also very good to keep in mind. Then we will talk about miscellaneous productive affixes. What does productive mean? Productive means you can do it, you can use them always for a certain type of words. So for example, there are affixes, the plural affixes, you can use them with every noun, because you can put every noun in the plural. Usually, of course, there are some exceptions of nouns that are not countable. But that means that the plural affixes are then productive with nouns. But we will also talk about some unproductive affixes. And why will we do that? Unproductive, like you probably can already guess, means that you cannot do them with every noun or with every of some word type. So why do we need to know them? You don't really need to know them, but in my opinion they are kind of helpful, because most often they help you to detect a word, what it could mean if you know what the affixes mean. So even if you cannot put the affix on the word yourself, if there is a certain pattern throughout the language that you can find in the dictionary, it's often very helpful to actually know these patterns and then be able to identify words just because you know these affixes. So let's go into it. So let's first start with what lenition is. Probably a very weird linguistic word you might or may not have heard before. If you heard before about it, then probably most likely from the Nutway community. So lenition means that a certain word changes under certain circumstances. It will always be the first sound of a word that changes. And yeah, that sounds now very vague, I know. We will look at which sounds change. But under which circumstances? These circumstances are certain prefixes or also certain adpositions. Adpositions will be handled in a video which will come up in 2 days, so there you will find a list of all the adpositions that cause lenition, but also certain affixes or prefixes specifically cause lenition. And how do you know this? In a dictionary they will be marked with a plus. So everything that is marked with a plus usually causes lenition. But what happens? This happens. So you see there is a certain pattern. We have the ejectives and changing into the non-ejective form, so p, t, and g. We have these forms, p, t, also ts, and the k changing into f, s, and h. And we have the glottal stop, so the tongue disappearing except for r and l. So this whole thing is pretty regular. We see that it's basically a softening of a sound. Why does the glottal stop, the diphthong, not disappear before double L or double R? The reason for that is kind of simple. the pseudo-vowels always have to have a consonant in front of them, so they cannot start a syllable. Because this phonological rule, the glottal stop simply cannot disappear because then the r or the l would start a syllable, which would not be possible. So that was very quick, but let's go back to our actual topic today, affixes, and let's start with the plural. There are 3 different forms. That's a bit different than in English. In English we have 1 form, which shows that there are more of one. In that we have 3 forms. So we have me, which means 2 of something. We have e, which means 3 of something. And we have I, which means 4 or more of something. And you actually have to be precise with these. So if you have 2 books, then you cannot say I book. You cannot use I here. You have to use me. You have to show that it's really 2 and not 3 or 4 or more. So now we want to be precise here. So for an example, ikran is an ikran or Benji in English. Mekran would then be 2 ikrans. Ekran would be 3 ikran, and aikran would be 4 or more ikrans. So pretty simple, you just put the syllable in front of it and suddenly you have your plural. Let's look at some more examples to maybe make it a bit clearer. So here we have 2 more. Loi is an egg, so meloi would be 2 eggs, eloi would be 3 eggs, and ailoi would be 4 or more eggs. Menantang would be 2 nantangs, enantang would be 3 nantangs, and ainantang would be 4 or more nantang. Soaya is a family, so mesoaya would be 2 families, esoaya would be 3 families, and isoaya would be 4 or more families. And lastly, utral is a tree, so meutral would be 2 trees, eutral would be 3 trees, and iutral would be 4 or more trees. So, but what is about this lenition I told you about? Like, there was no sound change, right? The thing is, if we go back, we see that all these sounds these words start with are not on the list we had. So loi starts with an L, which is not on the list of sounds that changes. Nantang starts with an N, also not on the list. So aya starts with an S, and utral starts with an U. So that's not the problem here. But this is what happens if we have words that start with a sound that is from the list. So for example, un, which means arm, become mepun. You see the p changes into a p. So mepun for 2 arms. Tep, fire, would become edep, 3 fires. Ketze, a tail, would become I ketze or just ketze. Why is the I here in brackets? We don't need it. Because the lenition applied, because the sound change k to k happened, we can already without the I know that this has to be a plural, so the I can be left out. This does not happen, we cannot leave it out if there is no lenition. So for example, for ikran, it always has to be I-ikran, because here we need the I to see that something changed, that's the plural, because there is no lenition. But here we have the sound change with ketze to getze. So because of this, we can leave out the I and build the so-called short plural form. But I get this also correct, of course. Patli, a dire horse, would become mefatli for 2 dire horses. Daronyu, a hunter, esaronyu, 3 hunters. Koren, a rule, would be I horen or just horen, rules. And then we see 2 more examples. Elan becomes melan. So what happens here? Like we learned, the glottal stop, the first thingy there, the apostrophe, disappears if we put me, a, or I in front of it. Then we would have meelan. So we had me and then the a-lan without the clause, so we had 2 a next to each other. Forest Nutmeg doesn't like this, so they melt the 2 a's into one, so we get melan, the 1 a disappears. However, probably in Reef Nutmeg that will not happen because they allow for 2 e's next to each other. So keep in mind that if you want to learn the Reef Nutmeg dialect, they will probably say meelan, so with 2 a. And then last we have Rta, which is the planet Earth. Me Rta, so here the glottal stop stays for the simple reason that that there is the glottal stop is in front of the r So we have the exception here, it has to stay. So that was already it about the plural. Let's get on with this and that. And here we again have two different prefixes for this. We have fe, which means this, and za, which means that. So other than English, where these two words are, however, own words, in that way, these are just prefixes. So you don't need a separate word to say this something or that something. Let's look at an example. Yayo means bird. So I can say fe yayo or fe yayo, this bird, and za yayo, that bird. I can also use these together with the plural prefixes. Fe me yayo, these two birds. Za me yayo, those two birds. Fe e yayo, these three birds. Za e yayo, those three birds. And fa yayo, these birds, and za yayo, those birds. Here you see that the za plus the I melts together to zai instead of zai yayo, and also the fe plus the I becomes fi. With zai it is obligatory, so you always have to say zai yayo instead of zai yayo. However, with fe it is optional, so you can in theory say fe yayo instead of fa yayo, but this is very, very rarely done. So you will, in 99% of the case, you will hear fa yayo. Elan is a friend. So fe Elan is this friend and za Elan is that friend. Fe Melan then is these two friends and za Melan those two friends. Fe Elan these three friends and za Elan those three friends. And Fayelan these friends, four or more, and Zayelan those friends. There are some special cases, but they make kind of sense. They are again to not have similar vowels next to each other. So if za or fe is followed by a noun starting with a or e respectively, then only one of these two vowels stays. So for example, adan means light, zatan then is that light. So not zatan, but zatan. Ilva is a drop or flake, so filva then would be this drop of flake. But ioang, animal, becomes feioang, this animal. The e and the e are different sounds in Navi, so in this case they are treated like this. So they don't disappear, not one of them disappears, but both stays. Fe and za, like I said, are very versatile in Navi. They're used for a lot of things. So actually a lot of commonly used words are derived by using these. So let's look at some of them. For example, we have zeng or zenge, both are the same, meaning place. So we have fitzeng, literally this place, meaning here. And we have zatzeng or zatzenge, literally meaning that place, which means there. We have u, which is a thing, and then we have fi'u, this thing, or za'u, that thing, and they're used to say this and that. Za'u also is used as a pronoun it. So these two are very, very important. Keep them in mind for your future Navi studying. You will see them a lot. Dr means day. So fe dr, this day, means today. Po means he or she. So fe po is this person and zapo is that person. And lastly, fia'o is a path or way of doing something. So fifia is like this way, like this. And zafia is that way, like that. And we're already at the next one. Fra is another prefix you can use in Navi and means every something, every noun. Yayo would then become fra yayo, every bird. Or you can again combine this one with the plural prefix I to get frai yayo, all birds. Of course, the meaning difference is very subtle here, but notice how also in English we have every bird, with bird being in the singular, without the s, and all birds, which is in the plural, birds. So we also make this distinction in English actually. Taronyu, hunter, would become fra taronyu, every hunter. Or frai saronyu, all hunters. Note here again, lenition. Me, e, and I cause lenition, but also all prefixes that are combined with them then also cause lenition. So because frei is a combination from fra and the I causes lenition, frei as a result, will also cause lenition. So we don't have frei taronju, but frei saronju, all hunters. And again, there are a lot of useful words derived from this. Grr means time, so frei grr every time means always. Zeng or zenge, place, can become frazeng or frazenge, everywhere, because it's every place. Po, he or she, can become frapo, which literally means every he or she, and then means everyone. U, thing, becomes fra u, everything. And alo, time, but in the meaning of an instance of something, for example, it's your turn, it's your time, or I did this 2 times, so in this case, in this countable way of time, becomes frado, every time. And that was it already about every. Now we talk about a bunch of other productive affixes. Remember that I told you? Productive means you can use these with every word of a certain type. So the productive affix I show you now, you can use with all nouns that exist freely. The words don't have to be in dictionary to use them. You can build them yourself with these affixes. So let's look at some of them. We will look at all of these at the example word nantang. Nantang is a nantang, like one of these small wolf-like or dog-like creatures Jake fights against in the very first movie. In English they're called viper wolf. And let's look what we can do to it with all the prefixes or suffixes we have. So first we have one that means a type of something, fne. So fne nantang would then be a type of nantang. Sna nantang would be a group or pack of nantangs. Sna only can be used with living things, but not with people. So you can say sna nantang for a pack of nantangs. You can say sna jerig for a herd of jerig. You can say sna utral for a group of trees, but you cannot use it with other things, only with living things. Then we have munsna nantang, which is a pair of nantang. Nantang vgeik, the condition of the nantang. So vgeik means the condition of something. Nantang tsiep. Tsiep is a diminutive, so it makes something cute or little. So nantang tsiep is a cute or little nantang. And we can combine these. So we can do something very weird like fravne nantang tsiep vgeik, the condition of every type of little or cute nantang. That's possible. Here are some additional notes about these affixes. So fne nantang, you can probably see fne comes from the noun fnel. Fnel means a type of means a type. So we can actually also say fnel nantange, which literally means the type of the nantang, because it's a genitive here, and that actually means exactly the same like fne nantang. So fne nantang, fnel nantange, it means the same. Like I already said, sna is only for living things except for people. Munsna nantang, I haven't written it down, but actually the munsna is very helpful to say to work in pairs, because you can of course also use for stuff like a pair of shoes, a pair of socks or whatever. You can also say, for example, oe te gankem si, I work, fa, with or by the means of, munsna tute, a pair of people. And that means that you work in pairs or in a pair. So you work as a team of 2. So I think that's a very versatile, very, very good usage of munsna. Very useful. Vgeik actually is used for 2 kind of often used sentences. So I showed you them too. Nga vgeik pifja, how are you? Literally it means the state of you, how, because nga means you, and vgeik is then the condition. So the condition of you, how. And also, ja vgeik pifja, how's the weather? Ja means air. So ja vgeik is the condition of the air. And then it means basically something like the condition of the air. How? So how's the condition of the air? How's the weather? And down there I also put again how the big word is actually composed. So fra, every, fne, type of, nantang, tsiep, cute, little, and vgeik, condition of. So the condition of every type of little or cute nantang. There are some more. Yes, there are even more. First, I want to show you am and I. If you already learned a bit about infix, you probably have seen them, because am is the past one, the past infix, and I is the future infix. But you can actually also use them as suffixes for nouns that describe time. That works like this. So dr means day. So drei is a future day, and it literally means the next day. So it means tomorrow. Sisit is year, so sisitai is next year. Dram then is yesterday because it's the last day. Sisitam then is last year. And you can do this with any nouns that have a time meaning. So I can also say kindrai, which means next week, or rewonai, next morning. And let's look finally at some verb affixes. We have two example verbs, yom, which means to eat, and taron, which means to hunt. First I want to show you is zuk. Zuk means that something is verbable. So zuk yom then means edible. Zuk taron means huntable. So here the verbs yom and taron were made into adjectives, edible and huntable. So zuk yom and zuk taron. So these are now adjectives. There's also ketzuk, which then means unverbable. So ketzuk yom is inedible, and ketzuk taron is unhuntable. Again, these are of course adjectives and not verbs any longer. Yomyu is someone who eats. You always makes makes a noun for the person who does the verb. So yomyu, someone who eats, so eater. Taronyu is then a hunter, because someone who hunts. If you are in a Discord server for learning Natvi, you probably have seen the words numeyu and kareyu a lot. Numeyu is someone who nume, so someone who learns, so a learner. And kareyu is someone who kare, so who teaches, so it's a teacher. That's where they come from. Then we also have zwo, which means the ability of something, and it again gives us a noun. So yom zwo is the ability to eat, the noun. Taron zwo is the ability to hunt. This is how the senses are built. So for example, ca means to see. Ca zwo then is the ability to see, so sight basically. And now let's look at some unproductive affixes. Like I said in the beginning, unproductive means you cannot build own words with this yourself. So you can only use these how they are in the dictionary. Why are we learning them anyway? Because they help you recognize word types. So for example, we will start with seeing how we can recognize some nouns. And let's look first at se and te. Both are noun creating prefixes, and sometimes they cause a bit of confusion because what's the difference? So let's look at some examples. Se usually creates a specific instance of something, while te creates a general concept. This is not always true. There are some te words that are more general, so or less general, but more of a specific thing. So this is not true in 1% of the cases, but it's a tendency. Let's say it like this. And mostly if there are both, so if there is the same word once with se and once with te, so like in this case setaron and tetaron, then this usually works. So setaron then is a specific instance of a hunt, and tetaron is a general concept of a hunt. So for example, so if I wanted to say that the hunt today was successful, I would say setaron, because the hunt today, it's a specific hunt. But if I want to say that I like that I find hunting fun, or that I find the hunt fun as a general thing, then I would use tetaron. We also have sefle and tefle. Sefle again is a specific instance of a success. So for example, if the hunt was a success, I would say it was a sefle, because it was a specific instance of a success. But if I want to say, for example, something like for success you have to work hard, then I would talk about the general concept of success, because for having success in general you have to work hard. So I would use tifle here. And here we see the difference a lot more. Ipo means funny, it's an adjective. Se ipu is something funny. It can be a joke or whatever, or a certain situation that is funny. Te ipu, a lot more general, is humor in general. So here we see the difference a lot. So you see, se and te can create nouns from a lot of different types of words, because we had taron, which is a verb, fle, which is also a verb, and ipu, which is an adjective. And actually, te can even create nouns from other nouns. So we also have elan, which is friend, and there is an example word. We also have the word te elan, which is friendship. So there, a more abstract noun is created from a noun. And maybe some of you will now be like, wait, but te is productive. You can build productively new nouns with it. And yes, that's possible, but only in combination with the infix us. On its own, te is unproductive, so you cannot just put te on anything. But we will talk about te plus us combination in the infix videos. Let's next look at v. V is a smaller part of a whole. It turns nouns into other nouns. So for example, we have numtseng, which is school, and then numtsengvi is a classroom because it's a small part of a school. Atan is light, and then atanvi is a ray of light, so a small part of light. Pamre is writing, literally it means sound picture, and then pamrelvi is a letter because it's a small part of writing. And probably my favorite example, I just love this, siai is fate, and then siaivi is luck. So the we see luck as a small piece or a small part of fate. So let's go on with nouns, there's even more. Tu is also very widely used and comes from tute, so person. So it turns words into nouns. Again, jaune means beloved, it's an adjective. And then jauntu or jauntu is a loved person. Vrfen, to visit. Vrtu is a visitor. Here we see there is a shortening, so it's not vrfentu but vrtu. Spee, to capture, and speetu is a captive person. Nai is something lower in hierarchy of something else, so it turns again nouns into other nouns. Ikran is a benji, and then ikranai is a forest benji, which is a small subspecies of the ikran. Ektan is a leader, and ektanai is also a leader, but in a lower position. Karyu is a teacher, and then karyunai is kind of an apprentice teacher, so someone who is learning to be a teacher. But I promise you, we are now done with all the unproductive affixes that are nouns, but we have a few more. Let's look next at how to recognize some adjectives, because there are also some unproductive affixes that give us adjectives. First, there is le. It's just a general adjective creating prefix. Fngap, metal, le fngap, metallic. Hurrap, danger, le hurrap, dangerous. Au is one, and we have the au, which means only, which is not I only do this, so as an adverb, but for example, the only thing, or the only dog, something like this, so as an adjective. We also have the autu, and here we see something interesting. It ends in a tu, and I just told you, hey, if it's ending in tu, then it's a noun. It doesn't work always, because sometimes we have multiple affixes on a word. So in this case, we don't have the word autu actually, it doesn't exist, but probably in the earlier stage of the language, this is now completely me theorizing here, we had autu, being a noun meaning something, like only person, and then they derived le autu alone from that. So they first put the tu on it, and then they put the le in front of it to then make the noun into an adjective. But autu doesn't exist anymore, or maybe also never existed. So now we have only le autu, which means alone. And al, to waste, becomes le al, wasteful. So you see, this le prefix can go on a lot of different word types to build adjectives. You also probably saw it already when you learned about adjectives, if you saw the adjective video before this, because the le causes a bit of a exception on how to use adjectives. And second, we have nga. It comes from nga, which is a verb and means to contain, and it creates adjectives meaning contains X. So for example, pai is water, and pai nga is moist, so something that contains water. Tifnu is silence, and tifnu nga is silent. And here we again see an example of our rule that not really working, because tifnu, we have the te here, so it seems to be a noun, but tifnu nga again has two affixes on both sides. So it has the te in the front and the nga at the end. So the te tells us it should be a noun, the nga tells us it should be an adjective, and here it really depends on what is derived from what. So we know that the tifnu nga is derived from tifnu, which is the noun, and then the nga was added last to do it into an adjective. So turned into an adjective. Tifnu actually comes from the verb fnu, which means to be silent. So we have fnu, to be silent, becoming tifnu, silent, the noun, and then tifnu nga, silent as an adjective. And another of these examples, titsteu, courage, becomes titsteu nga, courageous. What is also important to know is that these nga adjectives usually, or actually always, cannot be used for people. Why do I say this? Do you see the titsteu, courage? It is derived from steu, which is brave, means brave. It's an adjective meaning brave. So basically what happened here, we have the adjective brave, steu, then with the te becomes titsteu, courage, a noun, and then with the nga is again turned into an adjective, basically turned back into an adjective, titsteu nga, courageous. The difference here is that the steu, brave, is for people, can be used for people. So you can say a brave warrior with steu. But the titsteu nga cannot be used that way. It's for actions. For example, you can say that someone's action was courageous, or it was a courageous plan, or something like that. But we cannot use this word, the titsteu nga, to describe people. And yes, that was it. I know this was a very quick walkthrough through everything, and it was a lot of info dump, but I want you to see this video more of a list of affixes you can refer to and can maybe write down to have it in your notes. So it's less about explaining something, but more about giving you a lot of info and giving you a list of affixes that I find useful. So of course feel free to go back and watch again parts that were a bit too quickly, or that where you need to see the examples again. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments or contact me on Discord like always. And I hope you had some fun and learned something new. Hi, Yellow Bye!